Hello, welcome to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derik Melinda, the Game Master for the Knights. This week, we've been taking a closer look at the Dark Archive class playtest release from Paizo. Yesterday, we covered the Psychic, and we went over the class features and my thoughts on some of those features. Some of you had some pretty interesting reactions to what I had to say, and I will admit that overall my opinion of the class was fairly negative. And so I should have caveated everything by saying these are just first looks. Now, I've been playing the game for a long time. I think I can pretty much suss out how mechanics are going to work once they're on paper. But I will say that until we actually get a chance to play with this class on the tabletop, I am going to withhold any judgment about whether the class is good or not. So consider these to be more hot takes than, well-informed takes, because again, no one has had a chance to play with these classes yet. And so, we're just taking this as quickly as we can. The goal with these videos is to simply inform people who may not have had a chance yet to read through the entire document, as well as to give some first thoughts about what I feel about these classes. And it'll be interesting to see how, as playtesting goes on, and eventually the final release is released, that we see how things have maybe changed. And hopefully, possibly, Paizo hears some of these concerns and maybe make some changes to make these classes better. So yesterday we dealt with the Psychic. Today we are going to deal with the Thaumaturge. So the first thing you might ask is, what is a Thaumaturge? Well, Thaumaturge or thaumaturgy is sort of an old-fashioned word to just kind of describe someone who works miracles, is a miracle worker, does weird things with magic. In the context of Pathfinder, a thaumaturge is someone who has accumulated a bunch of different scraps of magical lore, of forbidden knowledge, and sort of gathered them all up, figuring that something should work. And when I first read this class, when I first heard about this class, the first thing I thought of was this scene from The Mummy, the one with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, when the character Benny is just pulling out various holy symbols, hoping that something is going to work and something is going to save him. So that is very much the feel I got from this class. And I would also go so far as to say this class just feels like an adventurer. They are a character that is built to handle a variety of situations. And I got to say, my first overall take of it is I really like this class. It has a great looking core chassis. And when I say core chassis, I mean your proficiencies, what you gain through the levels. It's very similar to the Bard, dare I say even better. And that doesn't surprise me because the Bard is a caster class, but this character has a lot going for it. It's charisma based. It has 8 hit points per level. It gets 6 plus intelligence skills. 4 of the skills are chosen and 2 more are freebies plus your intelligence. So a huge number of skills. That's the same number as the ranger gets. That's the same number as the bard gets. So this character is not wanting for skills. The only person who has more is the rogue. They start the game as an expert in will and trained in the others, and an expert in perception. So already off the bat, they have some really nice proficiencies. They are trained in light and medium armor, which is a nice step up over the Bard, hitting expert and master later on in the progression. They gain all weapon proficiencies, martial, simple, and unarmed. And they go to expert proficiency at level 5 and master proficiency at level 13, just like every other martial class. The other notable thing about their progression is at level 13, they gain a legendary will save with the typical result plus plus that we've come to see from other mechanics where a success becomes a critical success and a critical failure is upgraded to a regular failure. Their fortitude and reflex cap out at just expert, which isn't the strongest, and its perception hits master. So overall, this is a very solid chassis with martial level weapon proficiencies, martial level armor proficiencies, and a super high will save, which tends to be martial characters' weak spot. So just on the core spine of this character alone, I think it's really exciting. That's the core chassis. What about its unique abilities? Well, for starters, they begin play at first level with the dubious knowledge feat, which I don't care about. This is mostly flavor, and I don't even like the dubious knowledge feat because it feeds into the whole lying to your players when they critical fail on a recall knowledge, except now you have to come up with 2 things to tell them, one which is true and one which is a lie. And if you're anything like me, your players will immediately know which one is the lie because you're going to sit there and go, you've heard tale that the ogres like to have people over to view their window treatments, and you won't know what to say. So dubious knowledge is whatever. I mean, it fits the theme and flavor of this character, but I just don't really like it. The other ability that you get is Esoterica. Now, what is Esoterica? It's a weird collection of random bits of religious lore and anathemas. Think like I have a little bit of silver and a little bit of cold iron, a scrap of parchment that was once touched by a saint. It's again, a lot like Benny from the Mummy movie. Something is bound to work if you try it hard enough. This Esoterica ability gives you 2 new actions, Find Flaw and Esoteric Antithesis. That's a mouthful. So let's take a look and break those down. So Find Flaws is 1 action. You can only do it once per round, and it lets you recall knowledge with your charisma. And if you get a critical success, it gives you all of a creature's weaknesses, resistances, and immunities. Now, I kind of already was doing this with recall knowledge when you get a critical success. And if this is a special ability of this class, I really don't know what information you're supposed to be giving out with a critical success for recall knowledge. But I do think it's cool that they're actually specifying exactly what you get from this. And given the class's focus on exploiting a creature's weaknesses, I do think that this is a pretty cool ability. It also, should you critical success or succeed, you can follow that up with the Esoteric Antithesis action, and you get to do it as a free action, so you don't need to use an action for it, but we'll get to that in a sec. If you succeed at this special recall knowledge, this Find Flaws, you learn their highest weakness. And again, it lets you do the Esoteric Antithesis for free. If you fail, you don't learn anything, but you still get to use the Esoteric Antithesis. And if you critical fail, you are so shocked by how wrong you were and how much you could have screwed things up that you become flat-footed. So overall, I think this is a really, really cool feat. It really reminds me of sort of the hunt prey monster hunter build of the ranger, except it's a little bit cooler and a little bit more focused. So I really like that. And then for Esoteric Antithesis, when you trigger this against a creature who you've already discovered and found their flaw, this thing just gives you everything. Your attacks become magical, and they automatically shift the damage type so that you are hitting your opponent's highest weakness. So if their weakness to fire is 15, guess what? You are going to do 15 points of bonus damage. Are they weak to cold? 10? You're going to do 10 points of bonus damage. But here's the great part. If they don't have a weakness, or if their weakness isn't really that much, then you basically give them one, a custom one that only you can use, but it's equal to 2 plus half your level. So a level 20 Thaumaturge will pretty much always be hitting people for at least 12 extra points of damage or more, depending on what their weakness is. And again, this is any weakness, and it lasts until you find flaw again. So what that means is this isn't just a 1-round ability. No, you can keep hitting them with multiple strikes each turn with your, again, remember, high martial level weapon proficiency to just keep dealing the damage. Again, this is a very cool take on a ranger-like ability, much more like the Hunt Prey Monster Hunter build. And I've game mastered for a Monster Hunter Ranger, and it always felt like it was missing something. This is a much better Monster Hunter than even the Ranger. The second unique class feature that the Thaumaturge gains is their implement. This is a strange magical talisman or doodad that you can use to focus your power. Maybe it was something you found in an ancient crypt, or maybe it's the bone of a lost saint. Either way, it's a sort of an item that you can use to trigger additional powers. Now, you start with just one of these magical talismans, but you can gain up to eventually 3, each which has a unique set of powers. Now, we're going to go over them in a minute, but I did want to highlight one additional point. As you go up through the levels, you can use your implement to empower your attacks. Now, This is so cool. This character is going to be a damage-dealing monster. Not only do they get martial weapon proficiencies, and they get weapon specialization, this implement empowerment means that as long as you have a free hand or your implement is being wielded in one of your hands, then you can basically supercharge your attack. It starts off at 2 bonus damage, but it scales all the way up to 8 points of bonus damage. Now, you need to have your implement in your hand or you need to have an offhand. So basically, this character really can't be using shields, except maybe a buckler, I suppose you could get away with. But more importantly, it means that on top of finding the flaws, gaining the weakness exploitation, implementing the implement power empowerment so that you add 2, 4, 6, or 8 points of damage on top of this character's weapon specialization, the fact that your character is not strength-based really won't be much of a problem at all. You're going to have a huge static bonus to damage, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So what about the implements themselves? Well, the playtest has 5, and the final version, they say, is going to have 9, tying into the theme of 3 sets of 3. I think these are incredible. They are awesome. The powers are very powerful. They're fun. They're exciting. They let you focus on different elements of the game. They let you build your character in a different way depending on which way you want to go. Different thaumaturges with different implements are going to play very differently at the table, and I think this is a marked difference from the psychic that we reviewed yesterday. Additionally, you gain a power pretty soon, I think around level 7, which lets you switch your implements very quickly. Essentially, it's like quick draw, but for your implements. So they've even thought of the fact that your character is going to want to switch these implements in and out, and so they've given you an ability to essentially switch modes. You might start the fight with your amulet, which will make you very, powerful in protection, but then later on, you might switch over to, say, your wand if you want to do some range damage. I think this is very, very cool. Now, each of the implements comes in 3 tiers of power: Initiate, Adept, and Paragon. As you go up the levels, you can increase your rank or skill in a certain number of implements. You can either become a paragon in one implement with the other 2 staying at initiate level, or you can become adept in 2 of the implements and then the other one will still stay at initiate level. So again, a lot of customization, a lot of choice. And as you go up the level, you're going to gain new abilities and new ways to use existing abilities. I think this is very awesome. The first implement is the amulet. And again, this is more of a thematic choice. It can really be anything, but the amulet implement is focused on protection. Now, the initial ability which you gain as an initiate, you just get this straight off, is you get a reaction. And it triggers when you or an ally within 15 feet gets hit with first source of damage. And you give them resistance equal to 2 plus your level. Does this sound familiar? Sure it does. It sounds a lot like the Lawful Good Champion's ability to Retributive Strike. Now, of course, obviously, they don't get to make an attack of opportunity, but this is really, really cool because number 1, it could be you or an ally, and number 2, it could be any source of damage. It could be a fireball. It could be a cone of cold. It could be a lightning bolt. So basically, you will give them resistance to whatever damage type they need against all the damage. That is incredible, and that is awesome. So a very, very powerful ability with huge play potential, and I think it's a lot of fun. Now again, you can improve these as you go up the levels by increasing your level of proficiency in Amulet from Initiate to Adept or Paragon. If you raise it to Adept, then the target, which you've given that damage reduction, will continue to have damage reduction 5, eventually goes up to 10, until the next turn. So you hit them with one very powerful damage absorbing resistance, but then give them some ongoing resistance for the entire round. If you get it all the way to Paragon, then everybody, all your allies within 15 feet, gain both the initial damage reduction and the lingering damage resistance. That is so cool and so powerful. A massive red dragon comes in and breathes fire down on your party, but your thaumaturge with your powerful amulet gives everyone a massive bonus to fire resistance, and then gains lingering fire resistance so that any other fire attacks for the entire rest of the round get mitigated. And this is just a reaction. So you could just keep doing this turn after turn after turn, changing the resistance from turn to turn. This is a huge protective ability with a lot of fun upside. The second implement is the chalice implement, and this is focused on healing. So as an initiate, you give your players 2 options. One is you can take a sip from the chalice. You can only do this once per round, and it's you or an adjacent ally gains 2 plus half your level temporary hit points until end of next turn. I mean, this is okay. It's only one action, which is nice. It's a little bit of a temporary hit point bubble, which you can probably use pretty well. But it's not the most powerful ability. But you can drain the chalice, and that's going to heal 3 hit points per level. Now, you can only use this once every 10 minutes, so it functions a lot like a paladin's lay on hands. But once you've drained it, you can still continue to offer people sips. So again, this is a huge, awesome ability to just heal people both in combat and out of combat. And then the ongoing temporary hit points is a great way to sustain yourself. If you wanted to be a more martially oriented thaumaturge, just spend an action each turn, that elusive third action, to take a quick sip of your chalice and pop yourself up for 5 or 6 or 7 different points of temp. That's awesome. That's cool. If you become an adept in the chalice implement, then if you're critically hit by a piercing or slashing weapon, or ongoing bleeding damage, then you can heal for more. I don't know what the theme here is. I think there might be some sort of a Jesus metaphor here with the cup. I'm not sure. But if you are hit by that very strange set of circumstances, then your sip, instead of giving just a few points of temporary hit points, gives your level plus your charisma temporary hit points. That's a lot of temporary hit points. And if they drain the chalice to heal, they get 4 hit points per level instead of 3 hit points per level. Lastly, if you get your chalice to Paragon, when you or an ally drains the chalice, in addition to healing wounds and restoring a lot of hit points, basically the chalice just completely heals you. It'll get rid of a lot of your negative conditions. It will reduce your clumsy, your enfeebled, your frightened, your stupefied, and your stun conditions all by 1. The first time each day that you drink from it, it'll also reduce your drained condition by 1. And finally, the chalice will try to counteract any poisons, diseases, or curses affecting the drinker. That's incredible. And you can do this every 10 minutes. This thing is like a heal spell. It's awesome. If you wanted to be a healer, take the chalice implement and you're basically well on your way. In addition, remember, you eventually get 3 of these implements. So if you want to become a protective healing support character, you might take the chalice and you might take the amulet. But as you'll see with some of the later ones, you could take them and be a very different thaumaturge. I think this class is super exciting. All right. On to the third implement, the lantern. This is sort of a exploration mode, being more of a search, kind of a little bit of a rogue ranger feel to it. So the lantern, well, the implement lantern shines as a lantern. You and your allies get a +1 status bonus to perception checks made to search and to recall knowledge checks made within the light of the lantern. Additionally, if you have your lantern implement out, you count as searching in exploration mode automatically. So you could do something else with your exploration action, but while the lantern is out, you are counted as searching for traps, hazards, haunts, and secrets, like secret doors or secret treasure chests. So that is a really cool and really powerful ability. I really, really like that. If your lantern implement becomes adept level, well, guess what? Your lantern light now automatically reveals invisible and ethereal creatures. They still count as concealed as if a see invisibility spell was cast, but this is for free. And then lastly, if you take your lantern all the way to Paragon, then the light of your lantern has a free counteract check to see through illusions, disguises, and transmutation effects. So while I don't think the lantern is as powerful as the first 2 implements we covered, it is very cool. And remember, you do end up getting 3 of these implements. So it's totally a valid choice, and it might not be my first one, but I could see picking it up as a second or a third one, especially if my game is focused on, let's say, dungeon exploring, and being able to make those free search checks could be very, very powerful. The fourth implement is the wand, and this turns your thaumaturge into sort of a quasi-spellcaster. As an initiate, you'll choose fire, electricity, or cold. And then you gain the fling magic action. So it's 2 actions, and you basically kind of shoot off a little bit of fire or a little bit of electricity or cold within 80 feet, dealing 1d4 plus your charisma bonus modifier to the damage, and they get to make a basic reflex save. So it's not a spell touch attack, which is better because it means that instead of missing and doing nothing, it's a basic reflex save. So they can fail and still take they can fail and take full damage, or they can pass the save and still take half. And then the damage type is whatever type you chose. And then, of course, every 2 levels, this increases by 1d4. If you become an adept, the range increases to 120 feet. You get to choose a second damage type from the list, and then you get to choose between them as you fling them. Again, remember, your character's really good at sussing out creatures' weaknesses, so this is a great way to tag those. And then the fling magic also has an additional effect should the target fail that reflex save and take damage. If you have the fire wand or the fire fling, the target catches on fire, taking 1d10 persistent fire damage. If you're flinging cold, well, then the target becomes frozen and chilled, taking a -10 penalty to its speeds. And lastly, if you hit them with the electricity, they become shocked and shook up, and they become flat-footed until the start of your next turn. All three of these are powerful. All three of these are great. Lastly, if you become a paragon, you become a master of the wand. The range goes all the way out to 180 feet. It's pretty much nothing you won't be able to hit. You get to choose between all three of the damage types, really allowing you to suss in on a creature's weakness and make sure you hit them where they were going to take the most damage. In addition, now when you fling your magic, instead of a single creature, you can make it a 10-foot burst. This is a 10-foot burst, 2-action cantrip that has variable damage types. This is one of the best cantrips in the game. This is a very cool, very flavorful ability, and I just love it. Lastly, the weapon implement. You're basically saying your character is focused on battle. Now, this can be any type of weapon. It could be a dagger, it could be a sword. It's probably not going to be a two-handed weapon because you do need to be able to hold another implement in your other hand. These are really great, and they really basically say, I want my character to be really good at being a fighter. And in fact, they kind of give you some fighter-like abilities. So if you choose the weapon implement, then you gain the implement's interruption reaction. So if the target of your esoteric antithesis uses a concentrate, manipulate, or move action, or leaves a square, so basically if they cast a spell, or if they try to move away, if that creature's within reach of your melee weapon, or if they're within 10 feet if you're using a ranged weapon, which is kind of a cool new ability, then boom, you get to make a strike against the creature with your weapon implement. And if you critical hit, you disrupt that action. So they try to move away, you hit them, it's a critical hit, boom. They don't get to move away. And of course, the strike doesn't count towards your multiple attack penalty, and your multiple attack penalty doesn't apply to this strike. So very cool. It's very much like a barbarian's attack of opportunity, a paladin's retributive strike, a monk's stand still, a ranger's disrupt prey, all very cool. Also, if you choose the weapon implement at 5th level, you get the critical specialization effect of your weapon whenever you are using your thaumaturgic weapon. Again, this is basically turning your character into a martial character. They're going to have the normal weapon proficiencies. They have great armor proficiencies. If you choose the weapon implement on top of everything else, you'll be one of the best damage-dealing fighting types at the table. Okay, so the weapon can also go from initiate to adept. If you go to adept, if you use the implement interruption, the attack of opportunity basically, and you fail, okay, you still deal 1 point of damage, which can trigger the target's weaknesses as normal, which, as we said before, could possibly be like 12 or 13 points of damage. This means that even when you miss with your attack of opportunity, you're still dealing 13, 14 points of damage. No other class gets this. This is fantastic. Lastly, you can take your weapon implement to Paragon. And this way, you incorporate your foe's weakness, making your interruptions extremely disruptive. Now, if an opponent triggers your action and you hit them with your implement's interruption ability, they are disrupted not on a critical hit, but on a regular hit and a critical hit. This means that if someone tries to move away from you, all you need to do is hit them. It is incredibly powerful, very flavorful, and if you choose this implement, you are going to be one heck of a battler. Now, I'm not going to go over all the class feats, but they are awesome. They get the ability to create temporary talismans, which no one else was really using because it's kind of pricey, just like potions. So in this way, they're like the alchemist, but you're creating temporary talismans that you can attach to you or your other party members. That's awesome. You can create warding circles. They get ritual books. They can use scrolls. They can even gain familiars and get all the familiar feats. And they get tons of abilities that allow them to use extra magical items. I think this class is incredible. I think this class is way better than the alchemist. I think this class is Very versatile, very fun. I think there's a lot of things going on here that excite me mechanically. I think there's a lot of things going on here that excite me narratively. I think this class might be too good. I think they're doing a lot of things. They might be stepping on some of the bard's toes because of how versatile they are with their skills and their skill abilities. Now, yes, they do not get full spell casting, but boy, they make up for that in a lot of different ways. And just being able to have 9 of these implement options means that you are going to have so much customization about the way you build this character. I think people are going to be really excited about the Thaumaturge. That's what we have for the Dark Archive playtest so far. The Psychic, meh, and the Thaumaturge. I really, really like this class, and I think it's going to play really, really fun. I know that if I had the opportunity to get into a game that I wasn't running and be as a player, I would definitely want to roll one of these up just to see how well it works in action. Again, the class feats are very exciting. They take the class in even more ways, and I think it'd be really fun to see how it plays out at the table. So let me know, leave a comment below, or join our Patreon and hit us up in the Discord. We want to talk about these classes as we go through the next couple of weeks for these playtests. And I promise you there's going to be a lot of really, really, really in-depth conversations. Or if you think I'm completely wrong and you want to yell at me personally, also join our Patreon. And then you can yell at me in the Discord. Either way, I'd like to see you there because I want to have a conversation with you. Like and subscribe if you found this video useful. And I want to say thank you for watching and welcome to the Knights of Last Call.